Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am so excited that you are here today because you are going to learn about 3 of the most common hormone imbalances that I see with PCOS. And we are going to unpack each of these hormone imbalances, talk about how they're impacting fertility, and then how you can identify if it's going on in your body. Now, an important part of this is getting testing done and talking with a doctor. You don't want to feel like you're doing this alone. So this is a jumping off point to begin to understand what certain symptoms are going on in your body that are a sign of a deeper hormonal imbalance. Then we'll talk about what steps you can take to understand if that is indeed going on in your body with PCOS and one of the elements that might be contributing to your fertility struggles. I am your host, Dr. Angela Potter, creator of the PCOS Fertility Protocol and your PCOS fertility doctor. I am an integrative fertility doctor helping women across the country improve their PCOS, improve their fertility, understand the root cause of what's keeping them from getting pregnant, and helping them optimize their fertility so they have the best chance at getting pregnant. And before we get into it today, I want to acknowledge you for showing up here. I just think it is so cool that you chose to be here with me in this moment to get this information about what is going on in your body and what steps can you be taking in order to improve your fertility. Because you have been trying to get pregnant for the past few years, and it is a long, heartbreaking journey. You want to be growing your family, and yet you've been getting dismissive fertility advice like, well, just go back on birth control to get your cycles regular, or because you have PCOS, you're going to have to go through IVF, and your labs are all fine, so just come back when you're ready for IVF. And you're thinking, well, if my labs are fine, why am I not pregnant yet? And so you're committed to your health and to your body to figure out what is going on, work on addressing that so then you can open up your fertility, possibly naturally. I certainly see that happen. And you're committed to that time to focusing on your health in order to grow your family. And so I just think it is super cool that you are here. Thank you for joining me. If you are a new listener this week, welcome. I am overjoyed to have you here. We are a very cool community, and you are going to get tips and steps and learn the ins and outs of getting pregnant with PCOS. Have you joined me over on Instagram yet? The party is over on Instagram. So join me at Dr. Angela Potter. I would love to meet you over there. You get a lot of information during the week. You get updates on these podcast episodes, but also information from me like misconceptions or problems, or how steps on how to improve fertility, even when you've been told that your labs are fine. So make sure that we are connected over on Instagram. Also, have you gotten your free PCOS fertility checklist? Particularly if you are new here, I want you to know about this free resource that I have created just for you. It is a simple document that you can easily read through and check off the things that you have already in your fertility journey. And then you'll also be able to see, well, what's missing? What do you need to work on? What do you need to go search out in your healthcare to get this on board for your PCOS, for your fertility? So you can grab that free checklist over at drangelapotter.com/checklist. I will include those links here in the show notes so you can just pop on over really quickly to join me on Instagram and to grab your free fertility resource. If you are loving this podcast, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a positive review. Reviews help other women who are struggling with PCOS and fertility be able to find this information, and that could make their day. It could make their family. And so if you could pop over and put in a positive review on Apple Podcasts, I am grateful for you and the other women who are going to find this podcast because of you are grateful to you as well. It's my goal to help you understand how to put these pieces together and what complexities are happening with PCOS and how to get a straight path forward to help balance out your body, optimize your fertility, start seeing results like regular cycles, ovulation tests, because PCOS is overwhelming. There's so many different components to it, and it can feel like your body is broken. I have created this step-by-step protocol, my PCOS fertility protocol, that addresses the most important health pillars that need to be identified in your body and taken care of if they're happening in order for you to start seeing these results. And I see this over and over again. So if you are in that place where you're overwhelmed, know that there is a path forward. And if you are a longtime listener now, you know that my foundation for PCOS and fertility is getting that clarity on your own body of what's going on. And so that's why for today's podcast episode, I want to outline these 3 hormonal imbalances that I see really commonly with PCOS, and then help you understand what symptoms are showing up in your body that could point to these hormone imbalances. And second, to be able to understand how to move forward, how to advocate for yourself, what you can do to take that next step to really understand, okay, is this an issue for me? Is this something that's keeping me from getting pregnant? So let's dive in. What is a hormone imbalance? Hormones are chemical messengers in the body that act on certain organs. And we look at hormones from an individual perspective, like looking at thyroid hormones versus reproductive hormones. But it's also important to understand that the hormone system is one big system. We refer to it as the endocrine system. So these hormones are also talking to one another. And a hormone imbalance is just a very simple way to say, well, these hormones are not in the rhythm that they are supposed to be in for optimal health. And that creates symptoms, that creates fertility struggles, and it's really the backbone of PCOS and what's happening that's creating irregular cycles and other symptoms in your body. But it's not just one hormone that's creating all of this cascade that causes the symptoms that you're experiencing. It's more than one. The first hormone that we're going to talk about is actually a class of hormones, and that's the androgen hormones. These hormones are important for PCOS because they are included in the PCOS diagnosis. So for PCOS, there's 3 pieces to the diagnostic criteria. You need to fit into 2 out of 3 of those in order to be diagnosed. One of those criteria is having elevated androgen hormones. Testosterone is our classic one. You're probably most familiar with that. But DHEA is another androgen hormone that you may be familiar with or your doctor may talk to you about. Now, this is a really important hormone imbalance to know about because it's part of the PCOS diagnosis. And how are these elevated androgen hormones impacting fertility? When androgen hormones are elevated, they are shutting down ovulation. These androgen hormones are hormones, we also refer to them as male pattern hormones, okay? For somebody who has male organs, testosterone is their dominant hormone in their body, and that's natural. For those of us with female organs, we also have testosterone, but in much smaller amounts, unless there's this PCOS picture going on and testosterone is elevated. And so this can certainly happen in somebody with female organs, but it creates these symptoms. When you're talking about fertility, unfortunately, it's shutting down ovulation, which is why it's really important to identify and then support the body to come back into balance to reduce those androgen hormones in order to improve implantation rates. So how do you know if you could possibly have elevated androgens? The classic symptoms for this are acne. You could get facial acne, back acne, cystic acne, weight gain, particularly in the belly area, and weight gain that's really easy in the sense that you haven't made any diet changes, no food changes, you haven't really changed your exercise, and then all of a sudden all this weight is going on, or it's really hard to get off and it's just sitting there right in the belly area. And then the third thing is the unwanted facial hair, or all unwanted hair in general, because you could find it at other places, not just on your face. But for many women, it's that chin area, the beard, mustache area. That is the most problematic, but it could also be on the back, lower belly, kind of under the belly button, or upper thighs. And so those three symptoms are classic for elevated androgen hormones. Many doctors will talk with you in your appointment, and if you're talking about symptoms like these, they won't even do testing because it's really clear based on those symptoms and then based on other things going on in your body that you have this androgen dominance going on in the body. But there are very simple tests that you can do to actually look at your hormones. You can get a blood test to look at testosterone and DHEA. Now, I recommend getting DHEA sulfate or DHEA-S tested because that gives you a better marker of DHEA in the body and if it's pushing those androgen symptoms. You can do this through a blood test, and you can also do it through a urine test. We can look at hormones, which actually takes that next step further to understand hormone metabolites. So the thing with testosterone is that all of us have some testosterone running around the body. When we do a blood test, we're just looking at that total testosterone. We can also look at free testosterone that's not bound. But those are the two markers that we look at in blood. Testosterone in the body is then broken down into two different pathways. There's an alpha pathway and a beta pathway. Alpha pathway is the more potent pathway, so it can charge basically those symptoms. And in many cases, I talk to women who have had a blood test of testosterone run and it's normal, but they're still having all these symptoms. And so we run this metabolite test and we see that even though their testosterone levels are normal, they're pushing this alpha pathway, which is creating these symptoms. And we still need to address that because that can still be impacting ovulation, even though those regular levels of testosterone are normal. So that's why it's important to be working with a doctor who specializes in PCOS and understands how to put those pieces together and doesn't just say, well, your testosterone levels are normal on this blood test, like we can't do anything for you. It's important to take that next step to understand, well, how then is your body breaking down that testosterone, and is that creating the issue that's not just seen on that blood test? And then I'll talk about DHEA quickly here because there's a lot of information out there about how DHEA can be really beneficial for fertility. And it's true, there's lots of good research behind the DHEA. It is that androgen hormone. So PCOS is one case where DHEA is not indicated because you don't want to be pushing those androgen pathways with extra DHEA. Now, that really needs to be a conversation that you have with a doctor to understand what are your levels. Is it, for whatever reason, a necessary part of your fertility journey? But in general, it's not recommended that DHEA be used for PCOS. Let's talk about the hormone imbalance number 2, which is estrogen and progesterone. Now, these two hormones are the essence of your menstrual cycle. There are other hormones, LH, FSH, really important, um, that all interact with the menstrual cycle, and that needs to be looked at. Just for the purposes of today, I'm going to focus on estrogen and progesterone. Looking really high level at these hormones, if they are not in their regular rhythm, then you're not having a regular menstrual cycle. Your body is not going through the process that it naturally wants to be doing on a month-to-month basis. And so you'll struggle with fertility if your menstrual cycle is not doing what it's supposed to be. Because the point of the menstrual cycle is to ovulate and enhance, it is the basis of fertility in the body. Estrogen levels we see both elevated and low. And estrogen issues, whether it's high or low, cause fertility problems because if it's low, that estrogen can't be supporting the thickening of the endometrium of the uterus in preparation for implantation. Elevated estrogen can impact ovulation and implantation as well. Progesterone is classically low. And for people who are having ovulation issues, which is another criteria for the PCOS diagnosis, meaning you're having long cycles or irregular cycles or not having any positive ovulation tests, that progesterone is going to be low because progesterone is made from the corpus luteum, from the egg that is ovulated. And so if you're not ovulating, progesterone is going to be low. But it impacts fertility because if you are able to ovulate and yet your body is still not producing the right amount of progesterone, then you have a higher chance of miscarriage because your body's production of progesterone is what keeps the pregnancy going in the whole first trimester. And at the end of the first trimester, beginning of second trimester, the placenta takes over the job of progesterone production. And so the placenta is taking over that job. But in the whole first trimester, it's your body's production of progesterone. And so if that's low and you don't have enough progesterone to keep that pregnancy going, then unfortunately you have a very high risk of early miscarriage. So this is important for PCOS because, again, it is a part of the diagnosis, having ovulation issues. Now, yes, that literally is what is a part of the PCOS diagnosis, ovulation issues, which is a very broad term. There's a variety of things that can be contributing to ovulation. We were talking about testosterone a minute ago, the androgen hormones. Those can impact ovulation because estrogen and progesterone are those main hormones of the menstrual cycle. We have got to talk about these and make sure that these are getting tested and you are talking with your doctor about what those levels are in your body. The symptoms you may be experiencing that would lead you to think potentially my estrogen is off or potentially I don't have enough progesterone would be heavy bleeding, spotting, irregular cycles, a history of a miscarriage, not having any positive ovulation tests, PMS, lots of moodiness before your period starts. So those are the symptoms to watch out for, to think, no, my doctor hasn't talked to me about these hormones yet. Maybe I should go start asking some questions. Many doctors, when you're talking to them in the appointment, they might just say, based on the information that you share with them, oh, that's ovulation issues, or that's really classic for low progesterone. Here's the plan for moving forward. But there's testing as well. And I'm a big proponent for testing because it's concrete information that you have to see what your levels are. And so you can get these hormones drawn and looked at through basic blood tests. Estrogen, it's run as estradiol through blood tests. That is run on day 3 of the menstrual cycle. So day 1 being the first day of bleeding, and then you get that run on day 3. And then progesterone needs to be looked at 7 days post-ovulation. For somebody who is having a 28-day cycle, we say day 19, 20, or 21, go get progesterone levels tested. But if you're really in tune with ovulation and knowing that you're a little earlier or a little later, then you just count 7 days forward from the day that you ovulate to go get your progesterone levels tested. And similar to testosterone, we can test for the hormone metabolites through urine. So that is another option for hormone testing. The third hormone imbalance that we're talking about today is insulin. Insulin is not a part of the PCOS diagnosis, but it's one of the PCOS types. So first, you want to get the diagnosis of PCOS, which gives you really good information about what's going on in your body. And then the next step is to understand your PCOS type. There's 4 different types. You could be one type, you could be all 4 types. It doesn't matter how many of the types that you have, it matters that you figure out which type or types that you do have. Now, I have a lot of podcast episodes all about this. I have episodes on each one of the types. So if you're interested in learning more about that, after you listen to today's episode, hop on over to those episodes. I will include those links in the show notes. Insulin resistance is one of the PCOS types. Now, this surprises a lot of people because for many, they think that, well, insulin resistance is just a necessary part of PCOS, and that is not true. Another misconception about insulin is that it only affects people who have extra weight held on their bodies. That is not true. And so it's really important to dive into how your body is responding to the foods that you eat. Are you having blood sugar swings? Is insulin getting affected by those blood sugar swings? And how does that impact your fertility? So regardless of your body shape or type, you want to get insulin investigated to see if it's contributing to your fertility issues. I was working with somebody who for 2 years was working with a fertility clinic and her regular doctor, and neither of them had talked about blood sugar issues. For 2 years, this person was looking ahead at her time clock because she was in her low 40s, really wanting a baby and really wanting to optimize her health. But no one had talked about blood sugar with her until 2 years into her fertility journey. And it was somebody else, not even one of her doctors, who said, "Hey, has anybody talked to you about this?" And then she asked her doctor, she had to advocate for herself. And sure enough, comes back that she had elevated insulin. And so then she's like feeling like, what have we been doing these last 2 years? Why has this not been addressed? Like, if this had been found 2 years ago, then I would be in a completely different place now. So it's really important to get this checked. Have a conversation with a doctor about what this means for your body, because we know that elevated insulin shuts down ovulation. It can push those testosterone levels, so that's all contributing to stopping ovulation. But that's why it's so important. If you have elevated insulin, that's keeping your body from being able to release an egg. Elevated insulin comes from the foods that we eat. And you and I are eating foods all day long, basically on a daily basis. And so we can be making changes on a daily basis to support insulin to come down, to come back into a regular rhythm. But you've got to know first if that is an issue happening for you. Classic symptoms of elevated insulin are going to be you're shaky, hangry, getting headaches, getting irritable, lightheadedness, blurry vision, particularly when you haven't eaten in a little while or you've skipped a meal and all of a sudden, like you just get really shaky, headaches come on, maybe you have a really busy schedule during the day and you have to skip lunch, and by the evening you have got another migraine. Classic symptom of elevated insulin. It's important to have this conversation with a doctor about if these symptoms are indeed showing blood sugar issues, insulin issues. And then you can get some testing done. There's a variety of testing. You can get insulin levels tested. Some doctors run the oral glucose tolerance test, which is when you drink a really sugary drink and then get your glucose levels tested. Hemoglobin A1C is another test. I like to run that test because it shows your glucose average over the previous 3 months. And then another test that I really like is a glucometer test. And that's something at home that you can do. Some are finger prick tests where you prick your finger and then put the blood onto a little test strip, put that into a machine, or they also have the ones that just get put into your arm. And even doing that for a week, maybe 2, is going to give you some incredibly valuable information about your blood sugar levels and if they are rising too high and falling too low during the day. And that glucometer is giving you that almost moment by moment information about what your blood sugar is doing, which then you can use to curate a nutrition plan that's highly specific to how your body is responding to the foods that you're eating, and creating a food plan that helps you have really balanced blood sugar levels. Those are the 3 hormone imbalances that we are covering today. That's a lot of information. My intention is that you walk away with understanding some clear symptoms that could be happening in your body and what they are indicating, and then conversations that you can take with you to the next time you talk with your doctor, and even lab tests to get that information about your body if you haven't yet. And if you are looking for a doctor to help you put together these pieces, to help you understand the root cause of why you haven't been getting pregnant yet, and you're tired of getting dismissive information like, well, your labs look fine and the only thing we can do for you is offer IVF, and you just know that there's got to be something that can be done, I'm your doctor. Reach out, book a free PCOS Fertility Breakthrough Session with me, and I will help you put together these pieces. Understand what these missing links are in your fertility journey so far, and then I'll share with you what is the most impactful step you can take next in order to optimize your fertility. So you can sign up for one of those at drangelapotter.com/PCOS. And this call is perfect for you if you can check all these boxes. 1, you've been trying to get pregnant for the past few years and you haven't even had a positive pregnancy test. 2 is that you've been working with a doctor and you're not getting answers that feel right for your body. You are not feeling like they are doing a comprehensive look at what's going on in your body that's keeping you from getting pregnant. They're telling you, well, everything looks fine, come back for IVF, or just get back on birth control to regulate your cycles, and you want to try something different. 3rd, you are willing to spend time to optimize your fertility health because you want to have the very best chance at getting pregnant, and you know it might take a few months, but you are committed. And your husband is fully supportive of you making these health changes. He is right by your side saying, yes, this is important for the growth of our family. Let's do this. So if that sounds like you, this call is perfect for you. Sign up at drangelapotter.com/PCOS. And you don't want to wait, honestly, because fertility is one of those things that's harder to turn around the longer you wait. So if you're even considering this, sign up today, because today is the best day to get started. And as we wrap up here, a reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only, and the only way to get specific individual advice from me is to sign up for one of those PCOS Fertility Breakthrough Sessions. If nobody else has told you this today, I want to be the one to tell you that I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to optimize your fertility and get the best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. I'll see you next week.